What's happening, people? What's going on? All right. Well, okay. So here we go. Beginning of another gig. Trying to wind down. Trying to wind up. Trying to wind down out of sleep and wind up into waking life here. Got some Discord on. Just going to duct tape this electrical outlet up a little bit. Guess I got some liquid in it. And, I don't know. I was gonna paint yesterday and do a recording, but late at night I decided against it. And every time I record, I tend to get this snot in my throat that makes me go blah. But yeah, what I was going to go over yesterday was, I was going to do a study for this Tom Waits painting. And I don't know. There's been a lot on my mind, but it's mostly about the grid. Basically, like the Matrix, with kind of the idea that what's going on technologically is, in a way, biblically prophetic, but it's unknown because it includes everything. And here, let me see if I can just say this out loud until these guys get woken up. So I think that what's going on with the Matrix is that it's biblically prophetic, but in kind of a different way. Kind of like, it includes every technology and so forth. So, see how that works.
What the fuck are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Oh, I'm just talking to this recording that I'm making to chime in mid-sentence on Discord, see whether or not there's any feedback while I'm doing what I'm doing. But, yeah, so that's what last night's video was going to be about. This, Boy. Building it up. Saw these dipshit atheists on here. I don't know what the fuck's actually happening.
Are you okay?
Oh, I'm Dandy, man. I'm Jim Dandy.
That sounds.
I shouldn't say dipshit atheists, just people that think we're all alone. People that think atheism is a proposition. Or theism is a proposition. Anyway, not that that matters. This is about Tom Waits. There we go. So quickly clear the room, or start the room. I'll mute myself there so I can be candid here. Here we go. Anyway, so that's the that was the concern last night, was just the medium of everything. So I woke up, right, and so there's multiple forces that are working with me or against me or guiding me, right? And it doesn't feel like my own consciousness. It feels as if it's influences of outside media, but not media, outside physicality, right? Something in the empirical world is signifying me, kind of like you could say a bird chirps and does that. I mean, it's the same old philosophy, right? Anyway, point is that then it leads me to get online and discuss things such as my philosophy of economics for the indigent or the almost indigent soul in the first world, right? Somebody who can't keep up with the current modern financial situation. And then that led me to, do one-time work for ongoing pay at workwithmike.xyz, workwithmike.xyz, right? And I thought, for all your crypto needs, if you have $40 in BTC, you can always slide it into workwithmike.info, right? Workwithmike.info. And it was weird because, since I broke my body, I've been in an ongoing fight with how much energy I can surmise to stay awake, right? And, or not stay awake, stay, in dealing with pains and agonies and comforts, to stay sitting, to stay, to stay sitting, or to stand, right? So I've spent 2 days laying down, basically. And that was because the night prior, I had gone out and I walked like a block and a half around the city block and up and down a few stairs. And then I realized, like, after 4 or 5 beers, that I could, get over the pain. And so I ended up getting over the pain and feeling really good. Like, it takes about 5 beers for me to not feel any more pain in my feet and my hip and so forth. And so, anyway, it was just this. It was a great evening, but it was overload. I ended up drinking way too much, got shit-faced and tired, and took a lift home, and left my new roommate out and about, and he got home the next day, and and then I spent the next 2 days, the follow-up 2 days, laying in bed with my feet up and a heating pad on my hip. So, I was debating, just going over this whole, am I going to cut my feet off thing, right? Because my hip is blowing out on my right side because my gait is so awkward for the last several years. And so, I thought, I was trying last year, like, okay, build shoes, figure out how to make shoes, print some shoes that I think are going to work. And I made it only so far in that. And, and then occasionally certain pains subside. And anyway, and so it's so weird because when I'm physiologically down, sometimes my spirits are up. This particular painting right now is called White on White. I hope you enjoy. Anyway, and so, so anyway, then I get depressed, right? And I realized, when I was in the nursing home a long time ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago now, 8 years ago, that there wasn't a lot for me to do while I was on my back, other than I dreamt that, boy, I need a lot of money, right? And so hence the idea of multi-level marketing, because art seemed out of the question. And there's been a lot of things, a lot of push and pull. The idea of the Akashic record, whatever you're producing, is going to have some sort of not just a reverberation in your current life, but a reverberation out to the universe or into. I don't want to speak of afterlife per se, because I don't mind the idea of speaking about an afterlife, but kind of like whatever you conjure in your mind and you speak or you express somehow carries on indefinitely. And, so you want to make certain that what it is you're producing has, an amiable effect to the idealism that you feel like your soul is subscribed to, right? And anyway, even though I believe in, as long as we're in a capitalistic state, sometimes I feel like I'm free to do anything and the universe will just start providing. And that, homeless people and indigent people are over there somehow. They're of a quality that I can't relate to. And then, anyway, so, but anyway, so then it dawned on me that the workaday, this idea, this impressed upon the modern people of jobs, get to work people, busy yourself, most workplace, most romances occur in the workplace apparently. So a lot of getting a job is also like solidifying your social position as a money maker, as a personality. Like what you do occupationally is so relevant in some manner of your reproductive ability or your financial place in the world, right? And so back to the idea of making money, such that if we are in fact making money and it's a capitalist universe, or America is functioning as a type of socialized capitalism, because I was also arguing that capitalism has never existed without the economy of socialisms, right? So capitalism as we know it, right? I mean, you'll get capitalists and people on the right arguing, well, where's communism ever worked, right? And then they'll conflate socialism with communism, and the left conflates socialism with communism as well. But then I realized, well, for anything that's noticed of the public good and socialism, it's existed alongside of capitalism, either via tax or charities or the goodwill of others to distribute their wealth to the public good or the public infrastructure or any socialized thing from education, etc. And but anyway, but then it had dawned on me that ever since, I don't know, I guess ever since Ponzi came out, right, and then he distributed the idea of the pyramid, right, where it was this buildup of such things. It had dawned on me that back in his day, you could not suffice a well-regulated distribution of wealth going up a chain or up a pyramid, right? But now, ever since they met and proper accounting and so forth, it's not only possible, but within the West and most of the world now, provided that you are supplying a service or a good along with your function, then to orchestrate wealth distribution can be put together in such a way as to benefit many individuals. Because most corporations to scale upward. First you start as a plebe and you're on the bottom, then your skill set improves, and then you move into a management position. And that can last several years as just management at a static income. And then you might move into a supervisor position or supervisor and then management position. And so these are static, I don't know, their longitude, their latitude. Their latitude remains the same, so they don't scale up, right? And so in the modern day, it dawned on me that the technology is there, and if people are willing to invite themselves to join and participate in such a thing, that the current paradigm is still, there's many people that involve themselves in this because they see the benefit of it, and then there's many people that get involved that don't know how to do it, and there's many people who are conditioned to not accept that paradigm, find that it's a type of unethic. It doesn't have that sense, old-time school, work a hard day, bring home an honest paycheck, and that kind of thing, right? And yet I realize that the majority of goods, beyond food and shelter and the basic necessities, and even now within those things, has to do with an aesthetic, has to do with an art form, has to do with a product or service that is an extravagance above and beyond just individuals' existence, such as jewelry and ornaments and fashion, to hairstyling or makeup products, to cleaning products, to artistic forms and services, anything from theater and music, and ballet and the arts, and performing arts, all of that, right? That the majority of what people are in fact selling back to one another within a marketplace is superfluous. Not entirely, right? Like a lot of information and or the sharing of memes or paradigms or fixations on how one can share their mindset to the world is now, and I guess through journalism and newspapers and advertisement and other things in the past, but in the current day, that itself becomes a service and product. And anyway, so I woke up this morning after 48 hours of being down and kind of getting in this, identifying with this depressive mode of being. There was something, once again, I hear clicks, I hear things that in the past I realize I cannot simply ignore anymore, right? So now I might say I'm overreading into things, but I know that I need to, meaning I can't turn off my interpretation switch from the universe because of where it has in fact guided me in the past. So I look for accents and triggers and things that hit me, psychically or hit me psychologically, such to know whether or not they're, to presume that there's an intelligence behind it, because I have a history of knowing that there can be an intelligence behind it, and that it turns on and it turns off, and that when it's ready to absorb the individual, it will take over the individual. And then to make this parallel between Google Tech and 5G and artificial intelligence or alien intelligence, and to think kind of like, as soon as we start putting Sputnik out into space and we start orbiting our planet and putting out all these, that if there is another intelligence that has anything like kind of a Star Trek, well, the planet couldn't really, leave its atmosphere for the longest time, and as soon as it did, it became this class of a planet, right? And or just radio waves, whatever the Drake equation was based on in terms of radio waves and intelligences being sent out to the universe that are reverberative, such as to signal other planets that our technology and our intelligence is now ready for integration and or whatnot, right? So whether you believe in Area 51 and whether or not, Kevlar and modern computer chips and so forth were reverse engineering from alien spacecraft, or whether or not you think it's just human ingenuity. And even if it is human ingenuity, to what extent do you take like the CeeLo Green? I think you're crazy if you think you're in control, meaning that all of my movements and all of your interpretability of this is merely still the universe influencing your brain like an antenna receiver, and that you're merely a product of your universe through kind of a deterministic future, and that free will is merely the illusion that appears, as if you can take control of it. Meaning that if that is the case, then human ingenuity or reverse engineering or whatnot of other tech is still a product of some outbound intelligence that's influencing us as independent minds within kind of this landscape of meat spirits that are floating around doing what meat spirits do. And so anyway, once again, I woke up this morning with one of these triggers as if I was being told, right, not from media, but from my environment, that I needed to get up and make an Instagram post concerning workwithmike.xyz. Workwithmike.xyz, because it is a, do one thing one time, and you begin a profitability, right? But that I had anxiety because I spent years trying to brand myself as an artist, but found myself in deficit in terms of marketing, or in terms of how to put myself out there, how to utilize the technology to make my aesthetic marketable or appealing in a marketplace beyond just doing in-person sales, because in-person sales requires a lot of physical activity. So oftentimes I go out and then I'm in pain because I don't take morphine, so I drink alcohol, and then I'm a babbling yada, right? And that works in my favor often, but it's periodic, it's not ongoing. I can't give it a full court press, right? So I get on Instagram today, and blammo, there's other artists, because I subscribe to a lot of artists, and there's videos of artists that are painting, kind of high-speed paintings, and it reminded me of where I was in my past. If things had gone, more ideally, I would have been situated in a way with, like living off of my art, having a wife, having the kids, having the family, having what I thought, or what I had projected myself in terms of the American dream or the ideal. And, which was kind of this whole gearing re-overload of the last 8 years of indoctrination and argumentation against anti-natalist and getting, rewired in terms of, vegetarian anti-natalist, and trying to re-consume my ethic, right? But then, once again, viewing myself as a meat spirit, so to speak, and the idea of we are like matrix data sets that are still trying to envelop what it means to know and have knowledge about all sorts of things, right? You can take the phenomena of the flat earth, or take the movie The Signal, right, where you're bioengineered to believe in certain paradigms, and you're enculturated within whatever the data set is, and then you, upon reaching another paradigm, such as globe earth and round earth, you will have argumentation, and then evidence is presented as to what the case is in terms of the objective world or the empirical world, and or the structure of it, and then you argue through the evidences, and it in one manner, since you can never get all minds to believe in the same quote unquote external law of excluded middle, that which is outside of us domain, then you're always left with the communal contradiction or contras or contrary dictions within language, right? Within arguments and within paradigms. And it's, in a way, I had gone over a history of generally putting my foot down on one side or another of any controversy that I run into. And then as the paradigm shifts and you try to renegotiate what the limits of your ethics are, like from veganism, vegetarianism to meat eating and the relationship to other sentient animals, and to what extent you grant over some sort of empathy or something like that, you can take on migrational positions, the idea of antinatalism, bringing another meat puppet into the world that one has to be responsible for, and in a way disengaging the relational, intergenerational notions of bloodline and the relational aspects in favor of, the ethics of that other individual flumping through time in hopes that it itself procreates like salmon swimming uphill in order to populate a future of one's genetic interests, or one's meme and genetic interests and so forth. Just that whole notion, like that could be comparable paradigm shifting and argumentation based around that, as it is between globe earth and flat earthers, where I still generally come down.
Is this online guy confirmed as tasteless?
That's right. See, now I'm back in Discord. I didn't even hear what he said, but I might have to mute that and roll.
Is this omni-eyed intellectual guy confirmed as tasteless?
It's tasteless is another personality. Okay, anyway, but so to make a long story long, like I like to do and kind of knot this or thread this story, right, is that even though I woke up and I had this idea that I need to promote this scaled economic system, as I believe is appropriate and useful and utilizable, because there's people that have evidence that it can be done and that it is done, and I've had experience of it being done and done well, especially last year. And so because of that, though, after I saw these artists, the artist finished, and it reminded me of where I was. And his thema was the escape artist, right? Because I've had this anxiety, not only about like you have to escape the planet, or you have to escape the world, or escape your body, or escape your paradigm, or escape above and beyond your limits, right? And I remember this woman that had gotten me into this particular program, the workwithmike.xyz program, right? She was communicating like, hey, what's going on, Mike? Like, why aren't you doing this? Like, this is a piece of cake. And I said, well, I'm branding myself as an artist, right? Like, I've always been branding myself as an artist, even though it's the slow boat and kick my can down the road and it's got all its hiccups and I'm not where I want to be with it, so I had moved on that part of the paradigm as if I was going to move forward. And then I saw the artist again. I saw the escape artist. And I thought, and I have a commission to paint Tom Waits, right? And so it was just this toss, right? And then it had dawned on me, like I started to re-invoke my historic idealism in art, and realizing that it is one's production through the aesthetic, right? It is my argument that I'm branding myself as an artist. That is still like an underground, like the most important in terms of primacy, to shout out to the world whatever my aesthetic is with whatever abilities that I can convey, and hope that itself is a type of, like, that's the hope, is that whether you're a snowboard skier or a skateboarder or whatever your talent is, you could be athletic or you could be a great speaker, whatever it is, that you're using that particular talent to orchestrate some sort of favorability, such that the yielding into adulthood is the manifestation and the propagation of your talents. Right? You're a program, right? That's what it means to move into the marketplace. Right? And so anyway, it was like the abandonment of an old hope and the succumbing and the re-realization of what, not what one's opinion is, but what one's contribution is. And then what is most emblematic, parallel to one's soul. But then the other controversy, right? And the thing that had migrated me away from the arts was that I realized a lot of my depictions of the soul were as if I had chosen the red team, the Boston Red Sox, the Reds, the red man, something devilish, something historically raceable. I had an old car with flames and a fire sign, and everything was about fire and devil. And even though I was a secular atheist at the time, this historic looking back on myself of what have I produced was this yield of like non-pleasantries, right? A lot of artists in Utah like to yield pleasant imageries of mostly landscapes or barns or some wildlife or something to that effect, right? They're never diving into other aspects of their imagination. Well, I had found that the lion's share of my imagination was still yielding things that had horns or had some sort of demonic thing. And I had gone to Egypt, and I went to Upper Egypt, which is south of Lower Egypt, which was in Karnak, and they had Dromos. And Dromos are like Sphinx, but they're really goats, right? They're goat-headed Sphinx. And that's where the Advent or monuments to 6, the reiteration of 2/3, like 0.666 or 666, or even this notion of the beast to come in. And I mean, I have this whole historic entangled notion of my relationship, to the beast, or being beastly, being the meat part of the meat spirit, right? Instead of the spirit part of the meat spirit, right? In terms of that dichotomy. And then trying to get myself out of what I had done, not only to my life and my body and my art and my aesthetic, but what I had done to my community and therefore what I had done to my world. And what was being yielded in the world appeared to be populations of people that were following in the paradigm that I had chosen, and that upon leaping to, quote unquote, a parallel planet, another planet, to make that argument in non-definitive, I realized that this place where humanity is, in fact, is seemingly a type of demonic attributes or something. It made me refocus on the idea of, well, this alien or demonic or unhuman, unnatural capability was given to the darker, the more demonic, for whatever reason, where rationality itself becomes like equivocated with something that's demonic, right? As if the Puritan, like as if Muslim ideology of you must be competent, but not there's a certain natural ability to your being, right? As if that was dominant. I don't even know what I'm saying there exactly. Well, I do. I'm not certain quite how to articulate it, because it has to do with the history of aesthetics and the history of competence in the Arab world compared to the Christian and or Western ethos. And I'm just trying to favor the idea of remaining in a type of primitivism, where the West has really taken on its architectures and its analysis and its analytic structures such that it's yielding things much more predominantly than the Arab world was. Not to say that there's plenty of Arab mathematicians and politicians and scientists and all sorts of other things, right? There are plenty of competent people of any religion, so it would seem, or of most religions. And yet there does seem to be like a heavy population of just people, reading and kicking through time, and all they're really competent of doing, or not all they're competent of doing, but what seems to be their main yield is simply reproduction. And, the moving forward with their paradigm, how to live, which seemed to put their world in type this primitivism compared to modern technology of the West, or China, or how the rest of the world is functioning. Trying to get them up to speed, and certainly they are. I mean, Google's in Iran, and the globe is happening, in terms of tech. So there's plenty of people in the Middle East that are moving that way also. So this is like a type of an oversight, but it's also a game of catch me up, relative to the Eastern world and Africa and so forth. But I'm convoluting where I was trying to go with that. I was trying still, once again, to move into the idea of maintaining a type of primitivism for a certain sake of perhaps procreation or getting along, and then relative to one's idealism and one's competence in other fields. And then just thinking about the natural course of people's lives, because I think, and that's kind of a belief, but it's that in one's life, if one allows themselves to get to through adulthood, maybe to the age of 30 or something to that effect, that one has been given by the universe, so to speak, opportunities to meet others and procreate with others. And of course, this is a grand generalization, and there's marginalized exceptions of people that don't have genitalia, or they are so awkward and outside of the human gene, though, what would be accepted, meaning people like thalidomide babies with no arms and no legs, or something like that, that are so far marginalized that they're not going to procreate beyond the ethic, regardless of their desire to do so. But beyond that, it was this idea like the universe will shore up opportunity, almost, once again, biblically prophetic, of God provides. And then the Antichrist thema seem to be those who are not aware of their quote-unquote blessings, or they decide to not accept them or to rebel against them. And then I thought, well, that's the history of my attributes, especially relative to Mormon theology. And now I'm more like their Joseph Smith, claiming supernatural interactions, than their followers. Right? I'm more like their old dead leader. Like I tell people, hey, I think I have more in common with Joseph Smith and Muhammad than I do with anyone within Islam, not anyone, but within Islam, and people within the Latter-day Saint community, right? Or anybody that claims to have had quote-unquote experiencers, right, that have engaged in some way with that which they cannot explain with all of their capacity and all of their enculturation into what the limits of metaphysical naturalism are, right? There is still that scaling up, or mere luck of the universe, that quote-unquote some individuals experience some attribute that goes that is more than just merely boiled down to coincidences or acts of psychology, but they're more evidenced phenomenologically from the senses, not from the psychology. And regardless of how this is denied or worked around, in terms of contradiction and so forth, I cannot deny that, right? Meaning, if there is a type of truth, meaning in what way would I falsify that, would be, and I was told somebody, is if I found out perhaps I was in fact living on a holodeck, like in Star Trek, or if I was, that I was really living in the year, like, 4018 instead of 2018, right? And that this was some sort of, that higher technology could pierce into my world and breach, my code of physics, and there would be a sense of biblical cessation, right? Or something that was miraculous that occurred that I argue for, right? And so that would be the falsifiability. But in lieu of that falsifiability, I'm left to say, I've seen some shit that existed, and I did so communally, and you guys have heard me for years argue this with this, and I don't know what to do about that, other than my notion of what truth is not that I know what it is, just that I know that it was, and I can fall within an idealism that they are pointing to a type of Godhead, a singularity, or I can remain within a hold-on and assume that any deduction or induction that I make based on basically two classes of supernatural interaction, even though there's been multiple cases of things that I don't know quite how to explain in terms of possessional psychology, meaning where something is obviously influencing me that is, like in this psychiatric world, it would be said to be something of the unconscious coming up, right? As if it was a latent desire as opposed to being recognized as a foreign desire that was inculcating my psychology. Right? And so, anyway, to boil all this back down is after I got up and I wanted to make that Instagram, I decided, fuck it. The escape artist is still within the aesthetics, and I've got a lot of shit going on legally. Like I got a DUI court case coming up, right? It's a criminal case. I have a criminal and a civil case. But I'm the plaintiff in the civil case, meaning the criminal case already found my blood content to be above the legal amount. So that happens on Thursday. That suspends my license, possibly gives me jail time from between, somewhere between 2 days and 6 months, probably 2 to 6 days, according to the defender. And because of my physical issues, it may be waived or brought down to a minimal level. And anyway, beyond that, it's this, I have, my license is taken away. I have a hard time even walking to public transportation. Sorting out where I'm at in this particular city is problematic. Plus, I live upstairs. I don't have an elevator to my location. And that's always been a problem. And then with my feet, instead of getting my right foot cut off, my plan now, what I dawned on me, explaining to my new art roommate friend, because he was like, there's got to be something to do with your feet, da-da-da. And I'm like, these feet are wrecked, right? Get a load of that thing. That's a wrecked foot. Right? That's a wrecked foot. Anyway, so the thing is I was going to get it amputated because it's blowing my hip out. And I was going to make the shoes, but I was unsuccessful in doing it. I was even going to appeal to Nike or some of their shoe manufacturers, especially Nike, after the take a knee and the whole, what's his NFL nuts that had that whole controversy. I thought Nike would gladly help a crippled, prophetic, weirdo psychopath to regain his feet by, customizing his shoe for me. And but I never went into that appeal mode. And then I thought, well, the foot's bad already, and it's probably best that I get it cut off. Anyway, so I was explaining this situation to this roommate friend of mine, and I said, it dawned on me that the surgeon that last did my left foot surgery said that we can cut the tendons underneath your toes, right? We can cut the tendons, and because my toes won't bend backward, right? They might bend a little bit forward, like 3 of them on my left foot might bend a little bit, with a couple centimeters on the right foot. I have most of the toes will bend forward, but none of them will bend backwards like natural toes. So I walk as if I have a plank tied to the bottom of my foot, right? Because I'm more like Pinocchio. I was a real boy that became a wooden boy. And so anyway, but then it dawned on me, like he said, yeah, you can cut those tendons, and then you can bust the bones back on your feet. And even though your toes will remain limp, even though your toes will like fall limp, at least they'll bend backwards. And I thought that would reduce the area of the base of my foot so that I could get greater rotation, and my foot wouldn't naturally be out on its side. I was kicking sideways, fucking up the hip, because it's the hip right here that's blowing out. Oh shit. Oh God, I just reminded. Okay, it's 9:30 now. I have to call. Shit, I have to get off of here. I have to call my insurance company, because it turns out that Medicare and my insurance company with Medicare, Melinda, no longer works with the University of Utah, or there's issues with the billing. Oh my good gracious, all sorts of shit. Anyway, the point is the escape artist requires that I perform an art and not necessarily perform a marketing. And then once again, attempt to market the art. And any secondary marketing, although I trust it for all peoples and plebes that are doing the work today that want to scale up instead of remaining in supervisor, management, or plebing positions. If you are into crypto, the new wave is still happening in workwithmike.info, INFO. Would leave you to iLine. If you have $20, $40 of Bitcoin, you want to purchase more and move $40 into there, you can scale that up. And the other one that I have Simon and Laura up above, and they're influencing them. What are you doing? This is a piece of cake. It's one-time thing. That's workwithmike.xyz. You can check it out. That'll lead you to her front end, Laura's. You can watch her stuff. And if you want to get involved with that, but I'm not here. The problem is it's you can't change someone's dogmatic conditioning so easily about where they're at in life financially, especially with a lot of disabled people or people that are dependent on things now. And I'm not necessarily referring to myself. I just noticed that it takes people a long time that are disabled or they're conditioned over time in life to not change. They don't change their paradigm or their perspective on their capital approaches to the world. But nonetheless, the yield, the overarching yield, or where the signs led me into media and where the media led me back into the art today, had me say, Mike, get off your fucking ass. Your pain levels have gone down today. You've been in bed for 2 days, so get on with this pain. Know what I mean? Right? So that's what you're seeing, guys. There's a lot more going on in life. Boy, everyone's life, I'm certain, is mega complicated with all sorts of things. I also try to do this huge, I do a lot of somewhat prankster stuff and odd stuff. But after I got the DUI, by the way, I thought I was going to have to move out of state. And it turns out that all 50 states are now sister states in terms of DUI suspension, but some of them have loopholes and other time-relevant constraints or reliefs in terms of when you could get an interlock device as a breathalyzer to drive again. And even my mentioning, I got a DUI, ethically, like some of my audience, like, well, that's just so absurd. How could you do that? Like, you're a sociopath if you drive drunk. It is so weird like I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm evangelical. Like there's no way that I could accidentally harm another person. Like it's not in the cards, right? But I don't believe that to be the case. But I hold that as kind of a I don't know. Until otherwise, it maintains its position. It's a conditional trust that is different than what I'm working on otherwise in terms of modular truths, right? Like to put truth as modular, where attributes can maintain truth functions and then they relieve themselves from truth functions. Maybe move into a holon or agnostic positions so that truth function becomes migratable away from itself, and but other aspects that make up one's view of almost any paradigm function as a module, like an erector set, where you can pluck off one thing or dissipate it or lose its truth functionality and replace it with something else. And oftentimes that's how arguments go, or whole paradigms go, like if you're arguing with a flat earther or something like that, or even globe earther defense, they have to grab onto other truths and truisms, and where one doesn't suffice, they release that and they impregnate the module or add to the module its new substantial buttress, right? So, I used to use the metaphor of buttressing before modules, but it seems to me, as I'm trying to define a type of truth, a general truth or a general truism about the nature of reality. Part of that requires an abandonment and an erasure of truth on more micro levels, or I shouldn't say more micro levels, but shifting generalities into or micro and macro losses and or erasures or displacing truth function becomes obvious. Like to me, it's obvious that this is what's happening. And it's not just, but it might also be removing from one's focus or one's employment of particular truths or truth functions in order to substantiate arguments that inculcate or inform their paradigm, wherever it is they're holding, quote unquote, holding a position of position. A position that defines their paradigm. Like I said, it's weird to think about your most trusted in confidence positions having some sort of mutability or unsoundness, or when the foundations of one aspect of certain identities or seemingly contradictory or seemingly publicly evidenced rules or beliefs find exception and they fall apart, such that the foundation itself it just becomes like a remnant of an axiom and not the maintenance of an axiom. Oh, well, see what's falling apart. Okay, it tells you it's magic. So that tells you it's magic. I'm just wow. I guess the last thing I'll say is it took me a long while to go from atomized insanities and complete babble back to realms of rationality, and then to try to repopulate associative domains, meaning allowing my mind to inform and reconstruct, erect its erector sect of rationality for engagement, and then reappropriate my lexicon into different fields. Like now it's going into legal fields, So you have to get civil pursuant, or the pro se, or the non ex partes, or certain legal practices and procedures, down to fonts and size and formatting and all of that. You have to be able to absorb all of these new schools of paradigm, such that, over the years, or over the recent years, upon further reading, reading Frege's concept script now for my book, trying to utilize what he's doing, talk about the variant functions. That's another video. Anyway, yeah. So, staple that up. You guys have been good. Thanks for all the few of you that was watching. Isn't it a beauty? Doesn't that look like Tom Waits right there? So I guess I'm out. Gotta make phone calls. You guys have been good. How long this has been? We'll see. 3, 2, 1.